Rockford Fosgate is excited to bring you our new audio solutions for the 2018 and newer Polaris Ranger XP 1000 models. Welcome back, I'm Eric, and today we're going to show you how to install the all-new Stage 4 kit on this 2021 Polaris Ranger. On our Ranger, we went ahead and removed the windshield and unstrapped the doors to stay open, so we could easily move our camera in and out of the vehicle. Now, this step is not necessary for your installation. All right, before you get started, it's always a good idea to disconnect the power when working on any electronics. The battery is located under the rear passenger seat. You'll use a 10mm socket or wrench to disconnect the negative terminal. We'll continue our prep work by removing the hood and the upper cup holder secured by 2 push pins. Now you're ready to remove the lower dash assembly. Using a T40 Torx, remove the 7 upper bolts, then a T27 Torx to remove the 4 lower bolts. Then remove 2 push pins underneath the center control panel, as well as any air duct hoses if your Ranger is equipped with climate control. Okay, let's move to the center console. There will be 8 push pins that need to be removed from the outside of the center console, as well as 2 push pins from the inside seat pocket. As you're removing the panel, disconnect the front and rear ducts for the climate control, then remove the panel. Repeat the process on the rear center console, making sure to also remove the 12-volt accessory plug wires. Now that we're done with that, it's time to remove the rear headliner. If your Ranger doesn't have a headliner installed, you can simply skip this section. Start by removing the 2 push pins above the rear window. Then remove the 5 smaller bolts using a T25 Torx and 4 larger bolts using a T40 Torx. Before we lay out our rear speaker harness, we need to drill a hole behind the rear driver's side seat with the provided hole saw. This will give us access to route our harness into the center channel pocket. Now we'll finish by inserting one of the provided rubber grommets to protect the harness. Start by running the harness along the rear cabin frame to estimate your securing points. Use the provided zip ties and zip tie clips to secure the harness in place. Now, continue routing the harness down the driver's side rear door frame and secure it in place using the provided Christmas tree zip ties. Okay, once you're done, route the harness through the grommet and pull it through the center tunnel toward the front of the Ranger. Route the harness through the firewall, making sure to avoid any suspension or moving parts. Continue up through the access slit in the panel near the radiator. Now you're ready to lay out your main power harness. You'll run the harness down the front hood compartment and around the suspension into the cabin floorboard. Now, make sure to keep clear of any moving parts. Once you're in the center channel, continue running the harness to the rear battery location. Before we lay out our subwoofer harness, we need to drill a hole through the middle center console on the passenger side using the provided hole saw. Position this hole so that it doesn't interfere with the metal bracket located inside the center channel. Finish by inserting the provided rubber grommet to protect the wiring. Start by laying out the harness from the middle compartment. Slide the front subwoofer connector through the grommet, then route the harness with the Molex and RGB connectors toward the front of the Ranger. You'll continue to follow your power harness through the firewall up into the hood compartment. Once again, remember to avoid all moving parts, especially the suspension. Now, the remaining part of the harness with the single Deutsch connector will be routed toward the rear of the Ranger and into the battery compartment for a future upgrade. Once you're done with that, you can reinstall your center panels back into the vehicle. The front speaker pods install in the lower dash pockets. We recommend to test your pods in the dash to ensure proper orientation. To get started, you'll need to drill approximately a 1-inch hole on the lower inside corner of the pocket. This is crucial for proper fitment. Insert the cable into the hole and slide the pod into place before installing the lower dash. We use zip ties to hold our pods in place while we transported the assembly back into the Ranger. While this is not necessary, it made it a little easier. Reconnect the climate control hoses, then run the speaker harness through the firewall toward the front hood compartment. Now secure the lower dash using the 4 provided longer bolts and the T40 Torx. You'll need to use the remaining factory bolts and push pins to fully secure the lower dash back into place. Now you're ready to install your speakers. Connect the spade terminals matching red to positive and black to negative. Then finish your connections by plugging in the Deutsch connector. Locate the number 3 hole on the speaker pod, properly align the speaker and secure it using the provided hardware and Allen bit. The rear speaker pods are made up of 2 pieces, the mounting base and the outer trim panel. The pod's mounting base is secured to 3 plastic standoffs located on both sides of the rear roof. Run the wiring through the mounting base, then align it with the 3 roof standoffs and secure it using a 4mm hex wrench and provided hardware. If your roof does not have a factory headliner, you can skip this step. Since our Ranger does have a headliner, it's time to trim the speaker cutouts. Start by flipping the headliner over to access the underside. We'll start by pre-drilling the mounting holes to be used as alignment guides. Then, carefully cut through the headliner with your razor blade. You may need to make several passes to fully cut through the material. Once both sides are done, reinstall the headliner back into the Ranger using the existing hardware. To mount the outer trim panel to the pod mounting base, use the razor blade to score cutouts in the headliner. This will help you align the outer trim panel with the pod mounting base through the carpet. Regardless if you do or do not have a headliner, you'll finish the rear pod assembly here. Finish the rear pods by positioning the outer trim panel in place and secure it using a 4mm Allen wrench with the provided hardware. Now you're ready to install your speakers. Connect the spade terminals matching red to positive and black to negative. Then finish your connections by plugging in the Deutsch connector. Now properly align the speaker and secure it using the provided hardware and Allen bit. Our subwoofer has a ported design for a boomier bass response. We included a port cap that can be mounted inside the enclosure to seal it off for a tighter response. This also comes in handy for wet locations to prevent water from entering the enclosure. Start by connecting the spade connectors to the subwoofer matching red to positive and black to negative. Finish your wiring by plugging in the Deutsch connector. Then, verify that the Versa switch is set to 2 ohms. When aligning the subwoofer, the Diamond R logo on the woofer grill should match the logo on the side of the enclosure. Align the screw holes and secure it in place using the provided hardware and Allen bit. Now you're ready to install the subwoofer mounting bracket to the floorboard. Start by removing the 3 bolts using a T40 Torx. Now align the mounting bracket with the 3 holes on the floorboard and secure it using a T40 and provided hardware. Now be careful not to over tighten these bolts. Plug in the Deutsch connector to the back of the subwoofer and route the harness along the side and bottom channels. Then, secure the harness in place using the provided wire retaining clamp. The subwoofer enclosure is keyed to fit the bracket. Slide the enclosure back until it engages with the back of the bracket. Secure the front of the enclosure with a 10mm socket and the 2 provided bolts. To install the PMX harness, route the large connector into the upper dash pocket through the rubber grommet. Then, unplug the cap on the Ranger power distribution block and plug in the main power cable. Now, locate the harness with the RCA connectors. Feed the front and rear Molex connectors through the rubber grommet for connection to the amplifier later. The amplifier mounting bracket uses the existing mounting holes and alignment standoffs used by the support brackets located in the front hood compartment. Use a 10mm socket to remove the 2 back bolts holding the bracket in, and a T40 Torx to remove the 2 front bolts. Once you remove the 2 support brackets, you can slide the amplifier bracket into place. Then secure it in using a T40 Torx and the new provided hardware. Place the amplifier on the mounting bracket and align it with the 4 mounting holes. The Rockford Fosgate logo should be facing you for proper fitment. Use a 2mm hex wrench and the provided hardware to secure the amplifier to the bracket. Start with your amplifier's input connections located on the left side and the output connectors from the PMX harness. Plug the front Molex to the amplifier's front input connector. Then finally, connect the rear sub Molex to the amplifier's sub connector. Next, you'll connect your speakers to the main harness. Connect the Deutsch connectors on the front speaker harness to the connectors on the main harness labeled front. Match the front left and the front right connectors accordingly. Proceed to make your rear speaker connections to the main harness. Connect the Deutsch connectors on the rear speaker harness to the connectors on the main harness labeled rear. Match the right rear and the left rear connectors accordingly. Now we're ready to make our amplifier output connections located on the right side. Connect the amplifier's plug labeled front out to the main harness connector labeled front. Then the amplifier's rear out to the main harness connector labeled rear. The subwoofer harness is connected directly to the amplifier and contains two connectors. The large one is for connection to the 1500 X5 amp, and the small one is for connection to the 800 X4 amp. On this stage, we'll connect the large subwoofer connector to the amplifier's harness block labeled sub. Then connect the main power to the amplifier's power harness block, and finally connect the source unit's blue remote to the amplifier's blue remote turn-on connector. Now you're ready to install your color Optix controller and make the connections. Attach the power by plugging the black and red connector into the mating one coming from the PMX source unit. Next, connect your RGB control wires. You can use any of the universal 4-pin outputs from the controller by attaching them to each speaker harness equipped with the corresponding RGB input. Now take a second to clean up your wiring using the provided zip ties. Now you're ready to assemble your PMX source unit and upper dash kit. Start by aligning the trim bezel with the PMX source unit. Secure them together using the provided cap head screws using a 2.5mm hex wrench. Then, once that's done, use the remaining pan head screws to secure the bezel assembly to the dash kit from the inside. Now we're ready to install our PMX source unit. Start by connecting the antenna and extending the wire underneath the dashboard. Next, connect the RCA outputs to the main harness. Connect the front output to the front harness connector and the rear sub output to the rear harness connector. Then, connect our main white connector to the main harness. Replace the source unit assembly into the dash, making sure to align the lower tabs while sliding it into place. Finally, secure it using the 2 push pins. Now you're ready to make your battery connections and test the system. Fire up your Ranger and power up the source unit. Make sure that all functions operate like the AM/FM radio and make a Bluetooth connection to your mobile device. Now that your system's dialed in, we'll go ahead and replace the hood, get the door latches back in place, and get this system back out on the trail. As you can see, this install came together pretty easy. If you have any questions, give us a call at 1-800-669-9899 or through live chat at the bottom of rockfordfosgate.com. I'm Eric, and we'll see you in the next video.